Hey everyone, quick announcement. Each week, I try to bring you an episode to the show that offers something for everyone. It might be a training tip, insight into a world or national champion's life and how they got to where they are, or it might just be talking sports, the shooting sports in particular, for entertainment purposes. At the bottom of each of my episodes, you will find a Koji link to my website where you can find sponsors, links to guests, things of that nature. Currently, there are three sponsors: Laser App, Gun Butter Lubrication, and now Aim Size Products. I will be putting out a specific episode about Aim Size and their products. But by using the links provided, you indirectly support the podcast without any additional cost to you. As a matter of fact, you typically save money by following those links. They'll give you a discount and then they'll send a little bit my way just to kind of help with the podcast. The discount link for Hoist is included. However, I don't get anything from Hoist, but I believe in their product and I feel it's a hydration product for you, which I highly recommend, especially shooting matches in the summertime where it's hot and humid. Now, if you don't use any of the products listed, there is still a way to support the podcast by using the tip button on the Koji link. It surely isn't required. None of this is required, but it is greatly appreciated. I'm trying to make the podcast as professional as possible, which does take time, a lot of time, and money. You can use the link to email me as well, whether you have suggestions for guests or whatever, comments, feedback. Regardless of whether you use a sponsor link or not, I still hope you enjoy the show. Please like it, share it, and give it a 5-star rating if you're so inclined. Thanks. Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. This week's episode is a twofer. These two guys are Marines, one active, one former. They have their own podcast and they discuss marksmanship as it pertains to the Marine Corps. Join me in welcoming Frank Gow and Matt Gundlach to the show. How you doing, gentlemen?
Yeah. Appreciate
Wonderful. Yeah, appreciate it, Dave.
No problem. Have you ever gotten an applause before going on show?
I don't think so.
There's
Usually the opposite reaction.
Yeah. People aren't that pleased to see us.
Well, if you would, why don't you two gentlemen? We're going to go alphabetical order so that we're not confused. Unless I ask you guys specifically a question to you. So, Frank, why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Hey, everyone. I'm Frank Gow. I joined the Marine Corps in 2010. I started shooting competitively in 2018 when I was stationed out in Miramar. So I started shooting with the Linea del Fuego Club out there in San Diego near Temecula. Moved over to North Carolina, and during that, I made a lot of friends. Some of the guys that currently are on the shooting team. I got more into USPSA. I got into tactical games. Somewhere along the way, Matt asked me to be a part of his podcast. So I'm currently the co-host. I'm also the match director for Quantico, doing USPSA and PCSL. And I've shot production and carry optics, but the current trend is open.
All right. I didn't know you were a Top Gun instructor.
No, not quite that high speed.
Okay. All right, Matt, how about you? Matt, can you hear us? Hello? Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I seem to be having some low bandwidth over here. But yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Matt Gundlach. I retired last year from the Marine Corps. Infantryman by trade. Back in 2013, I was watching an episode of Three Gun Nation on the Outdoor Channel. Saw James Gill on there. Was like, wow, this is actually really cool. Thought it was took it as an opportunity of seeing this, saying I can do this too. Not that well, apparently, from my first match I ever did, finishing last. But took all the lessons learned and everything, and was like, I can use these skills here in order to train my Marines, and kind of went on from there. Got hooked on it, hooked on 3-gun. Back in 2018, I joined the Marine Corps shooting team. and I was on the pistol team, the precision pistol team. Shot some Bianchi with them. Uh, took over the entire team as a staff in 2IC, which is staff non-commissioned officer in charge, senior enlisted guy. And then a year out from retirement, I got my replacement, and so then I went and took over the 3-gun team. Took a step down because I wanted to kind of focus on me. Took over the 3-gun team, and now I'm retired and just kind of shooting tactical games, shooting 3-gun, USPSA here and there, but just mainly focusing on the 3-gun and tactical game side of the house.
Interesting. All right, we'll come back to that later because I've got a whole bunch of questions about that stuff. But before we get there, I've got to ask you guys all the hard questions right up front.
Okay.
All right. We're going to kind of burn you out a little bit, fry your brain a little bit to start with. All right, starting alphabetically. Frank, favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, good one. Okay.
Yeah. So it's I've seen it maybe 6 or 7 times. I just keep showing it to people, and it was the first movie in high school that made me seek better movies. I mean, it's incredibly well acted, and it's based on, I think it's a Stephen King short story, and yeah, I just keep going back to that one.
I always think when I think of Shawshank Redemption, I also think of Green Mile. Do you like the Green Mile?
I actually haven't seen the Green Mile. I know it's pretty close, and but yeah, I need to. So I get that reaction a lot.
Blasphemy.
I know. A lot of people always like, you haven't seen this movie. We immigrated to the United States when I was 2 years old. So a lot of people's parents tend to show them classic movies, and mine had China didn't have exposure to a lot of Western cinema until the end of the Cultural Revolution. So my dad's first movies were like Rambo: First Blood, and yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of gaps there that I had to go and fill in on my own. So I will go see the Green Mile.
Okay, yeah, great movie. Interesting. So we'll have to come back to the whole Cultural Revolution thing.
For sure.
All right, Matt, what about your favorite movie?
Okay. I'll say the movie, but then I'm going to go into a series because I like TV series a lot more. If I had to go with a favorite movie, American Psycho. Christian Bale is a phenomenal actor. He has been my kind of man crush growing up. But no, I just think it's a phenomenal movie, and it's, just kind of, what goes on in somebody's head. But, off of that, my favorite series I'd have to say is Spartacus. That came out probably around 2011, 2012. I love history. I wouldn't call myself as educated as what Frank is whenever it comes to history. He's getting his master's in history from Georgetown. But I just find the aspects of ancient history really interesting. One of my favorite podcasts is called The Ancients, and it goes over a lot of Greek, Egyptian, Roman history and stuff like that. So I just find it relatively interesting. And interestingly enough, besides all the drama and sex and everything that goes on in that show, the historical accuracy of how they fight the Romans and go through from town to town trying to survive and get their freedom, it's actually pretty historically accurate. So yeah.
Okay. I thought for sure when you said American Psycho and then you were moving to a TV series, you were going to say Dexter.
Oh, no. That was a good show, but by season 3, it just kind of got, season 3 of Dexter and on just kind of got, all right, we've seen this whole thing over and over again.
Okay. In that same genre, have you seen the series You?
No.
My wife's watched it. I watched some of it with her.
I've seen all 4 seasons. So it's a dude who is basically a serial killer.
Okay.
Yeah.
YOU. You. That's it.
Okay.
I think it's on HBO or I think it's HBO. It could be actually. I think it's on Netflix now.
I think it's
on
Netflix.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Netflix actually. Yeah, just check it out.
All right.
You may. So it's one of those things I found that people either love it or they hate it.
Mhm.
So. And we've been in both places, and we've still watched all 4 seasons. So, okay. Next hard question. Based on what I listened to briefly of your podcast, you guys have both deployed, which is the only time I ever read in the Marine Corps. So, favorite book?
So for me, uh, it'd be The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Just a quick correction, I actually haven't deployed, not for lack of trying. Yeah, just things have come up and the timing hasn't worked out in several occasions. But the things like I don't know. Have you read that book, Dave?
I have not. The Things I Carry?
The Things They Carried. It's a collection of short
No.
stories based out of Vietnam. So Tim O'Brien was a Vietnam War veteran, and he wrote a memoir after his time in the Vietnam War. And then 10 years later, he basically writes the same stories, but he writes them from a fictional perspective. And the whole book is about how, we go out and we experience these things in the military and life, and the way that we convey the truth of what happened to us in that distant land or whatever, through storytelling is, there's a little bit of elaboration, some places exaggeration, but it's a lot about his process of just processing what he went through by turning it into fiction, which I find really interesting. I was a creative writing major, so that book checks several boxes for me.
Okay. That's interesting. What about you, Matt?
So it's kind of a twofer here, all by the same author. Malcolm Gladwell, I think, is a phenomenal author. And I'm always looking for ways to really improve myself as a person. And so the first one would be Outliers. And that book is more or less how successful people surround themselves with other successful people. And, just become more successful. And it's not a matter of, just focusing on certain groups of people. It's how can I be a better person, a better friend, a better partner, and just a better person altogether, and actually make legitimate connections in order to become successful. How do I connect with people? And that really hits me because, you know, with life, all we have is each other, and we got to be as good as we can be. I don't want to say tactics, but I've used the same examples that he gives in that book in order to make myself a better person, podcast host, friend, and, just getting out and meeting people. I think networking is one of the most important things that a person can do in order to, to be successful. The other one is Blink, and Blink is, you have two ways of thinking. You have an analytical side where you're just constantly analyzing the information, and then you have that, quick, fast decision making skills. And as a Marine, you have to be equipped with both sides. You have to be able to analyze the situation, analyze the information that's been taken in, and then utilize all that information to make a proper decision. But not always do you have the ability to sit back and just think um, of what's going to happen if I do this. Sometimes you have to make that split decision and go with your gut. So those two have really played a big part in my development as a leader whenever I was in the Marine Corps, and continue to do so.
All right. It's funny you say that because I've been a paramedic for over 23 years, and the one of the I like medical stuff. It's intriguing to me. It's very interesting. The whole thought process of trying to troubleshoot what's going on with somebody. But the reason I feel that I am a good paramedic is exactly what you said. Being able to make a decision and going with it, not getting flustered and moving on. And that seems to be a huge issue for a lot of people, whether
Hmm.
you're in the military or paramedicine. All right. I don't know if you guys are into superheroes. I'm not really, but if you are, who is your favorite superhero? If not, this might be more Frank's role here. Favorite historical figure?
Uh, I'll start with the superheroes. It's actually Superman, and I know that's not a popular answer. Most people see him as boring, but there are some stories the stories in which there's been some comics where he's been written incredibly well. I think it's hard to write a good Superman story. So yeah, as a bit of a comic nerd, Kingdom Come, All-Star Superman, Red Sun. Like, I've really enjoyed a few of those things. In terms of historical figure, it's got to be Genghis Khan. So Matt mentioned I'm currently I'm a grad student at Georgetown. It's actually a Marine Corps program, so I'm going to go teach at the Naval Academy afterwards. But man, learning about what a massive Chad Genghis Khan was, and just how horrendously effective he was at conquering and just razing cities to the ground was it was pretty phenomenal, and that was a really interesting class to be in.
So how did he motivate everybody to come with him and do that?
So he would always send envoys to cities, and he said, if you surrender, then we'll leave you alone. We'll leave your system government in place. All you have to do is send troops when called upon. But if you resist, we're going to come and we're going to absolutely mess you up. So yeah, that was kind of it. And they were just incredibly effective at war fighting. There's a lot of things I could talk about in terms of why, but we'll just leave it at that. There was a lot of psychology involved too. People just didn't want to tangle with them. They basically set Baghdad back like an entire millennium.
Sounds like a lot like Xerxes and Darius.
A little bit. But yeah. Yeah.
All right, Matt, your turn.
All right. So Captain America, I'd have to say, is my favorite superhero. Kind of the resurgence of the Marvel Cinematic Universe whenever that movie first came out. Just he's just a ultimate figure. Like, even in comic book terms or even in real life, just somebody you can shape your life after, and your values and ethics and morals and beliefs, and not just really giving up. But in historical figures, in terms of historical figures that I kind of, my favorite, I would have to say is Boudicca. She was a Celtic warrior back whenever the Romans were taking on Britain, and she was put. Her whole tribe was basically the way the Romans basically went in there and took over and conquered areas. Her daughters were raped, and she retaliated, and basically she almost took on the entire Roman army that was in Britain and almost defeated them. Ultimately, they lost, obviously, but just somebody who could stand up to the bigger power and make an impact to where she's still known today. That's huge, especially as a woman.
Yeah, in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your favorite gun and caliber, but they don't have to be linked together. So just because, let's say your favorite gun is a 1911, doesn't mean your favorite caliber is 45.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so my favorite would be just the Beretta 92. So first pistol I shot in the military, but also recently gone distinguished in the Marine Corps, and it's responsible for 26 out of my 30. Well, actually, no, 20 out of my 30 points. So got a couple gold medals with that gun. A lot of people like to bag on it, but it's always served me extremely well, and I prefer it to the current M18, like hands down. I would take the Beretta every time. And my favorite caliber is 38 Super Comp. Like, I'm shooting it right now. It's super expensive, but it is an awesome cartridge. It just hurts the wallet.
Now, Frank, I was in before the 92 became part of the military, and I was never a fan of it. There was also the time when they first came out, there was a bunch of problems. Slides were coming off, whacking people in the head, all kinds of weird craziness. But what is it that you like more about the 92 than the 18 that's come out?
The 18's iron sights are really counterintuitive. They're very blocky. I know what they're trying to get at, but it obscures, essentially the point of impact is in the middle of the front sight post. So if you're shooting at a 25-yard target, the entire front sight post is obscuring your target, and you are just basically playing Where's Waldo with your bullet. And also, like, the current hotness is a target focus, right? And I've been working on it with irons. it's really hard to be target focused when man, I told a joke during the 2021 championships. The first time I shot the M18, I basically, for those of you that are Star Wars nerds, I was like, "That's no moon. Those are the M18 iron sights."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea. That makes perfect sense. All right, Matt, your turn.
All right. I'm gonna go with the M249 squad automatic weapon. Uh, that's a gun that I started with early on in my career. I was a saw gunner whenever I was on my first deployment to Iraq. Carried that thing for 40 miles on one operation in 11 days, clearing house to house. Uh, I know that gun inside and out. I loved it. I love the sound it makes whenever it is shooting. The cycle or the rate of fire. It's an awesome and beautiful weapon system.
That sucker is fast.
Oh yeah,
Do you know who Randall Tolles is?
I don't.
I know who he is. He's yeah, he's Army, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah.
He was just at well, I almost said Carry Optics Nationals, but no, it was last year's Nationals. Anyway, it's funny because he's in the Army. So we were having a conversation, and one of the questions I asked him was, okay, he told me what his favorite gun was. I said, okay, but what was your favorite, what was the most fun weapon you fired in the military? And he said, without a doubt, the M249. He said, same thing. He was a machine gunner, and that's what he shot. He absolutely loves it. And I actually mentioned the cyclic rate of fire on that thing because anytime someone says M249, I automatically hear that thing. That little sucker's fast.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I had to go for a second, it'd be an M240 in terms of machine guns. I mean, just those two weapon systems complement each other so well, and they run if you take care of them.
I'm still waiting for someone to say the Mark 19, but
You know what? It's a cool weapon system and all, but
It's
yes,
cool.
you're shooting grenades, but it's kind of like, all right, this is a big clunky thing that I don't want to have to try and move around.
And I guess
Same with the 50.
Oh yeah. Now, that thing's just too heavy. But I like the sound of the Mark 19, the tum 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 tum. So pretty neat. So what about caliber?
Caliber. Quite honestly, I'm a simple man. I like I like 9 mil. 9 mil's perfectly fine with me. Um, but I don't need anything more bigger. That's perfect for me.
Okay. All right. Now to finish these up, the last one is your favorite military experience. For Frank thus far, Matt overall.
So yeah, I haven't deployed, but I was able to travel to Okinawa and Korea. We went out there to do an evaluation, and so in Korea it was Pohang, Camp Mujuk, right? Did a week in Okinawa, and then we went over there. Camp Mujuk, yeah. So for those of you, it's really desolate. Like you think Korea, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. But it's like for those of you that've been 29 Palms, it's like Camp Wilson, but in Korea. So you don't even have the benefit of like talking to people in English. But yeah, that just being able to see that part of the world, and it also convinced me that in the future, if I do decide to stay in, convince the wife that if we get orders to Okinawa, then she's all in. But yeah, and then I also got to do some sightseeing in Busan on the way out, so that was pretty cool. I just remember a second one. Second one is riding an MV-22 into Las Vegas during a weapons and tactics instructor school, and just hitting the strip with my classmates afterwards.
Cool. All right, Matt.
All right. Probably I have a couple. Two prominent ones. So 2005's deployment to Iraq. That was probably one of my most kinetic deployments. I mean, it was cowboys and Indians out there. You were scared. You're having fun. You were doing your job. You made some of the greatest friendships that would last a lifetime, and have a lot of shared experiences. So that I would say that was one of my most favorite experiences. My second most favorite experience was in 2017. Uh, I was stationed over in Bahrain at the time, and I was able to get attached to Joint Special Operations Task Force Arabian Peninsula, and went out there, and for 2 months I wore civilian clothes, grew a beard, and basically dropped bombs on enemy combatants for 2 months straight. It was probably one of the most freeing experiences I had in a long time. In terms of, we were all grown men, and we just basically operated it on our own level. Nobody held your hand. Nobody, it was adult rules out there. So that was a good experience. Um, and I have been to Mujuk. I hate that place.
It's pretty bad.
It's really bad because whenever I was out there in 2014, we were out. I was an 81 section leader at the time, and it was, with the wind chill, it was negative 30 degrees, and we were dropping mortars. It was miserable,
That sounds awful.
and you're not allowed to wear gloves when you're dropping mortars.
I wasn't there when it was that cold, but we called it mud chuck when we were there. It was just all mud, pure mud. That's all it was. Yeah, I've been to Korea 3 times from Okinawa. From Okinawa, we went to Korea 3 times, Pohang and Busan, and we went to the Philippines 3 times. So we were just kind of all around.
Nice.
Good times. All right, now, Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one. Since Frank immigrated at the age of 2, that may be a little bit more of a story. I don't know yet, but when did you first shoot a gun, a firearm?
I would say I was probably 4 or 5 years old. So my biological father was a narcotics cop, an undercover narcotics cop down in Miami, back in the 80s. And yeah, I just remember, I vividly remember us going out to the Everglades, and just putting beer cans and sticks and different targets out there, and just shooting a revolver. That was probably one of the only memories that I have with him.
Did he? I don't mean to get personal,
No,
but
oh no, it doesn't bother me. He did not die. Well, he ended up dying later on of a heart attack, but he left me and my brother and my mother whenever we were 6 years old. So no love
okay.
lost there. But first time at shooting a gun, that was with him.
Okay. Now, Frank, you immigrated, so a lot of the people that I interview, their parents are American. They grew up doing a lot of the same stuff. A lot of people out in the country, just like what Matt said, going out and shooting for the first time as a kid. When was the first time you shot a gun, or was that even a thought growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I was a young boy. The problem was we immigrated to California, so it wasn't like it was very easy to get a gun. And most immigrant families don't, like, they got other things going on, so they don't necessarily get right into firearms, right? So the first time I fired a gun was a 22. I was a Boy Scout. I ended up doing my Eagle Scout, and it was at Boy Scout camp, and there was a rifle marksmanship merit badge, and it was just a little range bench rest, and we were just we just did some plinking, like some bullseye shooting. Yeah, so that was the very first time, and then I'd say the second time is when I joined and went to boot camp.
Okay. Now, are you a Mustang then?
Yes, technically. I like to tell people I'm more of a faux stang, or I guess you'd call it like I'm more of a pony, right? So for those of you, like, a Mustang is someone who goes enlisted then officer. I wanted to enlist. My parents told me they'd kill me if I didn't go to college first. So I did 1 year of college, and then I enlisted in the reserves. Helped pay my way through college. I did the commissioning program while I was going through college, and then as soon as I got my degree, I commissioned. So there you have it. I'm a dollar store pony.
Did you know that you wanted to be a Marine when you went into college, or?
A little bit. I had a buddy who enlisted out of high school, His name's Jason, and he became an EOD tech eventually, and looked up to the guy. He brought me along to pulley events. I just go and get smoked, and I was like, I love this. I want to keep doing it, right? But then talk with the parents, and I also got offered a scholarship to go to school in Boston. I was like, yeah, that's a good deal. I shouldn't pass that up. Yeah, I always wanted to get into the Marine Corps, and then it just worked out with my plans to enlist into the reserves. The thought process at the time, because I was young and idealistic, was that I wanted to go through the same path that my future Marines would go through if I was going to become an officer.
Okay.
So I was a mortarman. I was a mortarman reserves up in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, 1st Battalion, 25th Marines. And Matt and I have talked about this. I spent some time on the gun line, but most of my time was the fire direction center. So if you give me a plotting,
he's smart.
yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you, like, it's the Marine Corps, man. They looked at me and they're like, "Yeah, are you good at math?" I'm like, "That's kind of insulting." But then I ended up.
I was gonna say they're gonna make the Chinese guy who knows the math go over and be in the.
I swear to you, we man, it's one of my most vivid memories. We were doing land nav, right, and a captain's leading us, and we hit our point, and he's like, "What's our back azimuth?" And he points at me. He says, "Asian kid, math, go!" And then this is the captain, right? This is the officer, and the staff sergeant that's with us is like, "Sir, we can't say that." And I'm like, "By the way, the back azimuth is this." So there's a reason that the stereotypes exist. Yeah, it's good times.
Oh, that's hilarious. Now I got to ask you. Did you ever have to drop any mortars in 30-degree below zero weather?
Oh no, absolutely not. We
Okay.
it got cold in Massachusetts, but no. Honestly, all my training was during the summer, the dead heat in North Carolina, South Carolina. So that I never got to experience like the true cold,
Okay. I got to experience Bridgeport in the winter.
Oof.
So I enjoyed it. That I'm a cold weather guy. So I was okay with it. I know you guys ended up at Quantico, but where did you guys go to boot camp? Did you go to Paris Island or San Diego?
So I grew up in California, but I went to boot camp in Paris Island because I enlisted when I was going to school in Boston. Yeah, that was 2010. But Matt, you enlisted out of Florida, so you were also Paris Island, yeah? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he enlisted out of Miami, and that means that he would have also went to Paris Island. Yeah.
Oh, I was straight up Paris Island.
All right, and what year was that, Matt?
Platoon 2075 Echo Company, 2nd Battalion.
Yeah, what year, Matt? I think he's got some latency issues going on.
Yeah. 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
So I was in Korea just when you were a very little guy, because I was in Korea in '86 and '87.
I wasn't alive then. Sorry. Sorry to be that guy.
So there was even less there then than there probably is now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Frank, you were saying you went to college and you did creative writing?
Yeah. So I went to Emerson College, which is like a super liberal arts school in Boston. And so I did a little bit of fiction and nonfiction. I actually published a book for my thesis. It was a memoir of just my family's like story coming to the United States, and my parents growing up in China, growing up during the Cultural Revolution, deciding to come to the United States, us growing up in California, and then eventually my decision to join the Marine Corps. About 100 pages, donated a bunch of money to the Wounded Warrior Project, and it was just something nice to like leave college with.
Oh, wow. I don't think there are too many people that publish a book while they're in college. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, mostly because there's not much life to write about when you're 22 years old. But I managed to figure it out.
Yeah, you had a story, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Now, what is this? You keep mentioning Cultural Revolution. For those of us who don't know what that is, what is it?
So yeah, I'm probably getting some things because I've read about it historically, but also heard about it from my parents. So it was instituted while Mao was still alive, and it was eventually like it was a total ban of like Western culture, along with some other things, some economic shifts and etc. But essentially, it was China like closing itself off to the world, and so during that time, my parents are lucky. They were both the youngest in their families, and they were the only ones to go to college because um, by the time the Cultural Revolution had ended, they were of college age, so they could actually, go pursue their undergraduate degrees, and eventually qualify for the H-1B visa, which is like a special technical visa, which has become kind of a hot topic now. But the initial iteration of it was to allow people with special technical skills, like engineers, to immigrate into the United States on a work visa and eventually transition into citizenship. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's definitely more to it. In terms of like economic policies and things that went wrong. But yeah, that's the period of life that my parents grew up in.
Okay, I got you.
I think I'm back.
All right. So Matt, after you, just so I can put this into perspective. So I graduated from Paris Island and then I went to ITS, Infantry Training School.
Right.
You graduated boot camp and did what?
So I graduated boot camp and then I went to ITB, Alpha Company. ITB, became an infantryman. I was an 0311 by trade. After that, I went security forces. So I went to the security forces school there in Chesapeake, Virginia. Was in Spain for a year after I graduated there, and
Nice.
that was in 2003, and then 2004 I went to Fast Company. After I got done with my time in security forces, I went to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, in 2005. Whenever I checked in there in 2005, which I want to say was that was in January, we deployed about 2 to 3 weeks later to Al Qaim, Iraq.
Ooh, that was quick.
Yep.
Hello,
Yep.
now pack your shit.
Yep. Which, I kind of preferred it that way. And I kind of, for the most part, that's how I spent most of my career. I had 8 deployments total. And I literally, the longest time I spent in a unit was in 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. And that was 2007 to 2011. After I got done in 2011, I went to the School of Infantry. And then in 2014, I checked into 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, deployed 4 to 5 months later after that, came back from that deployment, did a quick workup, and less than a year later, I was over with 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, and we deployed over on the Black Sea Rotational Force, came back from there, and then 5 months after I got back from Romania, I went over to Bahrain for a year, 13 months.
Romania. Who did you go to Romania with?
1st Battalion, 8th Marines.
Wow. Now, what was that deploy? I got to ask because we never had Romania on our plate. So, what is this Romania thing?
So it's a Black Sea rotational force where you go over to Romania and Bulgaria, and it's more of a strategic mission. Countering Russian. I don't remember exactly what they said, but basically you're there to counter any kind of Russian aggression, and you're there as a strategic force in place. And that's what we did. My platoon, we spent a good amount of time in Romania. Did some bilateral training with the Romanians, Bulgarians, Slovenians, and the British Royal Marines. I spent about 2 months down in Bulgaria. We did some joint exercises with them there, and then I spent a few weeks over in Israel, and we trained with their counterterrorism unit.
Nice. We did very little training with the Israelis, but that's cool. All right, now I got to ask you, Spain. When I was in Spain, meaning we hit Rota doing a med deployment,
Right.
I went to, I think I was by myself. I think I went to a club out in town by myself, and I saw all the women there. I was like, oh my God, every woman in here is at least an 8. I'm like, I may not go back to the ship. How did you enjoy your time in Spain?
I don't remember half my time in Spain.
You enjoyed it a lot.
I did.
Okay, fair enough.
uh, I think um, after we'd get off of work, we'd be out. Me and a friend Brammer would be hitting the bar by 7 p.m. We'd probably return by 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd have Reveille at 5:30 in the morning, and then go PT, work all day, and then wash, rinse, repeat. And I remember, well, I don't remember, but probably the first 6 months were like that.
Youth has its advantages.
It does.
That's at the age where you can do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny. All right, now going back to you, Frank. So you went into the reserves, but you went back, you finished out college, and then you went to OCS. Now, what was that? What was that process like? What did you have to do to? Did you have to go through the normal recruiting steps? I mean, how do you go from a an enlisted guy in the reserves to a college grad and OCS?
All right. So when I showed up at the recruiting office, I told them I had some college under my belt. So they had an agreement with the officer selection office to basically send people over there. So I actually they were like, why aren't you going straight OCS? And I told them, it was a conviction at the time. I wanted to go through boot camp. I wanted to go through SOI first. I wanted to experience that side. So what I did was enlisted into the reserves, and then I did the platoon leaders course. It essentially splits OCS up into two segments. So
Right.
I do boot camp in 2010. The summer of 2011, I do 6 weeks at OCS. The summer of 2012, I do another 6 weeks at OCS. I pass. 2013, I graduate. I have some time to myself, so I get another job. I tutored the ACT for a bit, and then I checked into TBS, the basic school, and then I started my career from there. So I basically did like boot camp in 3 summers in a row.
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds miserable.
it was pretty bad. It was all summer, and it was just yeah. But they're quite different, OCS and recruit training. And I would say that like boot camp's harder. It definitely is. You just have less agency, and they can just thrash you more. But having gone through that first, like understanding the culture, I knew what I was getting into with OCS.
Has it helped you so far in understanding the enlisted ranks a little better at all, or maybe being able to create relationships with the NCOs?
A little bit. I don't lean on it too hard because, I mean, I don't try to sell myself as a Mustang. It's just something that naturally comes out in conversation. And when people see how long I've been in, I think where it helps the most is like, as a junior Marine, like you really don't have a lot of agency in any situation. You're just kind of told where to go, and you're not in control of your schedule. So I really internalized that, right? Like the things that really pissed me off, I had some pretty lazy staff and COs in the reserves. It's pretty chaotic. I saw a lot of things that I told myself, like, I'm not going to do that to other people. So I try to remember what it's like to be the little guy, especially now that I've had like 10 years on the other side.
When after I got out, I went into the Army Guard 2 years later, and 5 months into it, I still didn't have a uniform. And I went up, so I just came in civilian clothes, and the sergeant first class, who had been in the Army Guard for 8 years total, and was an E7, was like, well, you're not guaranteed a uniform. You have to wear your old Marine Corps stuff. I'm like, that's not how this works. Yeah, I mean, he had zero leadership ability. So I was like, okay, I'm going to switch over to the Air Guard now. I'm done with it. So
yeah, the reserves is like I said, quite chaotic. And
yes,
honestly, I regretted it instantly. When I showed up, people were out of shape. People were super unmotivated. There were a lot of people like me who went into the reserves with the intent of going through OCS, and they just kind of lost motivation along the way. And I was like, hell no, I'm getting through this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get my degree, and I'm going to go active duty. It's probably what I should have done the first place, but my parents would kill me if I didn't get my degree first.
Matt, Okay, so you said you found three gun in 2013, and I believe you said it was 2018 you found yourself on the pistol team.
I did, yes.
So what happens in that 5 year gap? How do you go from finding three gun to being on the pistol team?
So in 2013, I started shooting USPSA three gun, all from watching Three Gun Nation. Shortly after I got into shooting three gun, I deployed over to Okinawa. Did that deployment, came back, started shooting some more three gun. Deployed again on the Black Sea Rotational Force. When I came back, I met with, or I shot the FNH three gun championship. Well, I really had no understanding or who the Marine Corps shooting team was at the time, besides what I had seen on TV with James Gill. But I ended up running into them. Nate Stocking was the staff NCOIC of the team or the three gun team at the time, and him and one of the other guys asked, "Hey, have you thought about coming over to the Marine Corps shooting team?" And I was like, "No, I never really gave it a thought." "Well, would you like to come to the Marine Corps shooting team?" "No, I would not." They were like, "What? What?" I was just like, "No, I'm about to go on another deployment, or I got orders overseas. I'm gonna be stationed overseas for the next year in about 5 months," and so I kind of left it at that. Like at that point, like shooting was just a hobby. Didn't think of doing it in any kind of professional capacity at the time. My heart was just set on doing as many deployments as I could get in, and going overseas as much as I could. And whenever I got over to Bahrain, um, I got a message from Stocking, and he was like, "Hey man, I want to ask you again. Do you want to come to the team?" And I was, this time I just kind of sat back and thought about it rather than make an impulsive decision. And so I talked to my wife, and I was just like, "I'm being offered this. What do you think?" She's like, "Well, what are you thinking? What does it entail for us?" It's like, "Well, the biggest thing is we'd have to move from Camp Lejeune up there to Quantico, Virginia." And I was like, it's an opportunity, and it's a chance for me to take a break. Plus, you know, it'll save us a lot of money. I won't be spending money on all the ammo and more guns and this and that. That was a lie. I did save money on ammo, but I ended up spending a lot of money on on guns. But in 2018, I got to the team, and it was a good experience. I wasn't planning on taking over the pistol team. I never shot precision pistol. Whenever they say, "Hey, you're going to the Bullseye Pistol Team," I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Sorry if I cursed.
It's
but
okay.
and I looked at it, and I was just like, "Oh dear, what did I get myself into?" And so I shot some Bianchi with them. And honestly, I was able to successfully cut both Bianchi and precision pistol out of the program, just because my whole career has been deploying and fighting, and I just look at that, and yes, the fundamentals are there. Those are the extreme fundamentals, but where's the relevancy whenever it comes to war fighting and combat? I didn't see any value in it, and so I kind of made it a mission to cut precision pistol out of the program. And then in 2020, I kind of used COVID to my advantage. I was able to cut it out because there was no nationals, and I was like, I have a whole team of guys here that have nothing to do. I was like, we have to break this team up and do something. And once we got the go ahead to break those guys and put them in the action pistol team and in the three gun team, it was kind of like, all right, well, we don't have a precision pistol team now, so let's just get rid of that team altogether. And we made it happen.
What is precision pistol?
It's bullseye pistol where you're shooting a static target at 50 yards away, one-handed, and so you shoot at 50 yards away and 25 yards away, and at 50 yards you're shooting a string of fire, 10 rounds, in 10 minutes, and then you move closer to 25 yards and you shoot two strings of fire at 25 yards, 5 rounds in 10 seconds for 2 strings, and then you shoot 5 rounds in 20 seconds for 2 strings, and that's it. That's the whole course of fire. And I was just like, this is boring. I will attribute it to making me a better pistol shooter and a better marksman altogether. Um, because it really allowed me to hone in on my fundamentals and be able to think whenever I press that trigger, or just develop the muscle memory to have that perfect trigger press. But ultimately, the course of fire and the antiquity of the sport, it just needed to go.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. The relevancy to the Marine Corps, there really isn't a whole lot of it, other than you're building the fundamentals. Other than that, there is no relevancy. So, all right. So it sounds like what you're describing is just all the NRA pistol shooting,
NRA and
basically.
CMP, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
the national matches.
there you go. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Because so when I was on the summer team in '90, you had the rifle team, which was high power.
Yep,
You had the pistol team, which is NRA, CMP, national matches,
yep,
and you had the international team,
yep.
and that was all you had. So, obviously things have changed. So that's why I asked you. It wasn't called the precision pistol at the time, so I had to just get that clarified. I do think there is some benefit to that, but again, like I agree with you guys that it doesn't pertain to anything that you do in your normal job.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not how that works at all. So I totally get moving away from it, getting away from it. When I started seeing guys shooting USPSA style practical shooting, I was like, oh, that's much better if that's what they're doing, because it's much more relevant to what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get it.
And I don't want to say we got backlash, but there was a lot of people who were not happy with the decision to move away. But, it happened and it's staying.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, things change. It's no different than, the 03 17s.
Mm-hmm.
So things change. I definitely don't agree with that one. I think that's about as retarded as it gets, but that's another episode altogether. All right. So Frank, how did you make your way? You went to TBS. Did you have any say in what your MOS was, or were you just told you are this?
I had some say, which is the Marine Corps does what it does, and they let you make a wish list.
Right.
And then in my case, they disregarded my wish list. My first
Exactly.
choice, yeah. So I did pretty well in TBS. The problem was I didn't do well enough to guarantee an MOS, and my first choice was tanks at the time. In retrospect, that kind of worked out that I didn't go into tanks because my
Yeah.
best friend he did really well at TBS. He got tanks, and now he's a cyberspace like officer. So I ended up becoming a communications officer.
Okay.
At the time, I I hated it. Right? They told me I had to go to school in 29 Palms for a year. It wasn't the way I saw myself. It wasn't, I was coming from a mortarman background, and uh, I was young. I felt sorry for myself, but eventually I got over it, and I was like, there are Marines out there, going through school and out there in the fleet, and you're going to be their lieutenant. So get over yourself. Um, and yeah, so communications officer. I started at Com Squadron 38, and there was a bunch of us that checked in at the same time. But I had some prior experience that earmarked me. So within 6 months, I was the XO and the OPSO of my company. They kind of forced me to like assume a lot of roles quickly, and it just kept going from there. I went to weapons and tactics instructor school in Yuma. Learned a lot about the wing, which most people don't understand, and really helped me out, helped me understand the Marine Corps in a lot of ways. From there, I went to North Carolina. I was the combo for Intel Battalion for a little bit. That was during COVID. That helped them out with some stuff, and then I did a company command, and then I got selected for my current program.
Okay. All right. For the two of you, when during COVID, what did Marines do during that time?
I'll
Well,
let you go first.
all right. Well, for the first month or two, whenever it kind of all kicked off, like everybody on the team pretty much stayed at home. But we were given the freedom, hey, if you want to come in, you want to train, you can come in and train. So a bunch of us did that just because we didn't want to just be sitting around doing nothing. I would say come by the time June hit, I was like, all right, we got to do something. We can't just be sitting around doing nothing. So I was able to organize a team trip up to West Virginia at Peacemaker National Training Center, and we spent the entire week there. And just we trained for 4 days, and then that Friday we just shot a match as a team. Um, Other than that, like after that trip, we all kind of went back to work as normal.
Okay. What about you, Frank? Were
Yeah.
you in
So
North Carolina?
I was in North Carolina. Happy because if I was stuck in San Diego, that I don't think that would have gone as well. Being in North Carolina was nice because it life it didn't really affect normal life as much. In terms of the Marine Corps, I was the communications officer for an intelligence battalion. In intelligence battalion, they have counterintelligence, like geospatial guys, a bunch of analysts, and essentially, me and my shop, we had to migrate the entire battalion to telework, right? So we provisioned a bunch of laptops, and we we're trying to figure out Microsoft Teams, and we're basically trying to figure out VPNs and all that stuff. And I was kind of the face of all of it, right? It's interesting right now because I would say that on one spectrum, like your I guess your senior crowd, they didn't really grow up with the internet and computers the same way I did. So some of them get it, some of them get it really well, and then some of them like I gotta show them how to map their printer every single time I walk by. It's just the way it
Lord.
is. And I as a Cabo, I'm a customer service guy, right? If you don't get it, I'm going to create a sheet, Barney style, trying to tell you how to do it. But sometimes like you just keep leading the horse to water, and you hope that eventually learns to drink on its own. But that was a lot of what we did during COVID. It was honestly nice because at the time I was a geo bachelor. I'd given my wife my GI Bill. She was becoming a pharmacist up in Massachusetts when COVID struck. It was
Ooh.
basically said, "Hey, we're going completely online." So we thought we're going to be apart for 3 entire years, but we actually got to spend 3 to 4 months together. And during that time, I was working out a lot. I'd cook a lot of dinners for her because she was always in class, and we got to spend time together that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So, and I drive hard a lot. So honestly, it was pretty good up until the point that I found out that my NCOs weren't even doing basic things, and that everyone kind of needed to come back to the office because I couldn't trust them anymore.
What are we drinking, Matt?
Legion. It's a bourbon. So this bourbon here, it's a mix between so the distillery they brought a distiller from Japan, and so it's kind of a mix between a Japanese and a Kentucky bourbon, where they kind of partnered up and made this bourbon.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. Wow. I didn't even know they made bourbon in Japan. Who knew?
Well, it was made in Kentucky, and that's why it's still a bourbon. But they brought the Japanese distiller over here to Kentucky.
That's pretty cool, actually. I'll have to uh, I'll have to put a note down when I'm on yours. I have a bottle of Habu Sake from 1987 that's never been opened.
Oh wow!
Nice.
Yeah, right over there.
Well,
I
I can
bought it.
always get some more. I got friends over there.
Yeah, I was leaving in December, and I was like, you know what? I can't find this over there. I'll take this with me. So I bought a bottle and never opened it.
Well, if you want a bottle, I'll reach out to a friend and I can get you a backup.
All right. So Frank, how did you find yourself at Quantico at weapons?
So I'm not a part of weapons training battalion right now. I'm actually
Okay.
It's gonna blow some people's minds. My only job right now is to be a student at Georgetown. Granted, it's a master's program, and there's some weeks that I'm reading 3 academic books and writing papers and all that stuff. But so I'm on the historian program right now, right? It's 2 years in a master's program anywhere you want to go. It just has to be in history. And my payback tour is to go to the Naval Academy. I'm going to be teaching. I'm going to be professor of naval history. I'm going to be doing that for 3 years in Annapolis. Um, I so I know a lot of guys on the team. Based on my schedule, I go down to Quantico to train. Like I train on Quantico once a week. That's how I get my practice in. One of the guys on the team is also shooting open. He's shooting my backup gun, and I'm kind of loading ammo for both of us until the team figures out their ammo situation. So that's the scheme right now, and yeah, it's pretty nice. It's a good program.
It sounds like a hell of a deal.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
still
pretty
don't
sweet gig.
I still don't believe it sometimes.
Wait, but hold on. We got to back up a minute. You're loading ammo for a guy on the team until they figure out their ammo situation?
So there's a bit of they are currently not able to shoot government ammo through personal guns, just until they figure out the legal specifics in the order. So the guy, it's Sam Nelson. He's been a member of the team about a year and a half, and he was actually one of my Marines when I was down in Camp Lejeune. I used to send out these email blasts to the entire battalion and be like, "Hey, I was a geo bachelor, right? So every weekend I would drive like 3 hours to go to Sir Walter. I drive, all over the state just to shoot." And I brought Marines along with me, and some of them stuck with it, and some of them did it once. And Sam Nelson's one of the few that actually did it persistently. We ended up shooting some division matches together, and he caught the eye of the team. Like he put in a lot of work on his own, and they ended up pulling him to the team. So he's always wanted to shoot open, and I was like, "Hey, let's do it together." So our first major match was a Dragons Cup, and we both placed like 14th and 15th respectively.
Nice. Okay. So the guys on the team use their own personal weapons. They don't use issued weapons, or
So they're currently using issued weapons, but there was a period of time where some of us were using our own personal guns, just because we preferred to. Like I had a high-end 2011. The team at the time didn't really have any double stack 1911s or 2011s, so we were basically allowed to shoot those guns at that time. The gunsmiths at the precision weapon section are doing a really good job in making really high end firearms for the team, just good quality weapons. So they are using those guns now.
okay. Now, the loading room. I spent a little bit of time in the loading room in 1990 in between Eastern Division matches and the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Are they, are, I
They are
mean, at the time,
currently not loading any ammo right now. Everything that the team is getting for the most part now is either they're shooting Dodic government ammunition, like the 77 grain, stuff, and they're practicing with the 9 mil, the 124 grain 9 mil that the government purchases. But they've also set contracts up to where they're getting Atlanta Arms, so and they're getting federal shotgun ammunition. So they are contracting a lot of that stuff out because it is better, it is consistent, and whenever they did have the ammo loader there, the only team he was loading for was the rifle team.
okay. I think that's what they were primarily loading then too. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was curious. Okay. Because obviously it goes from everything being 9 mil to now you have 38 Super Comp or 9 Major, you know what I mean? Or 40. So,
Yep.
okay. Interesting. So then, Frank, then you're not at weapons. You're doing your own little gig over here on the side.
Yeah.
Wearing
Yeah.
uniform. Sweet gig. How did you become the match director for USPSA and did you say
PCSL.
CSL?
Yeah, we just started doing PCSL. So Tim Hichak, Major Hichak, he was the OPSO for Weapons Training Battalion. I first ran into him when I was shooting matches down in North Carolina. But he basically took the USPSA match on Quantico and completely overhauled it, professionalized it. He does his own welding and a bunch of other stuff. He made his own like steel poppers. Really handy guy, and also just a really good officer, very organized. So he basically created like a very popular match. It's a testament to what he's done because as you know, like not everyone has access on Quantico, and
Right.
if you are a civilian shooter, you have to go to the guest office and you have to request access on a match weekend if you don't have like a CAC, right? And we still sell out. Like those matches are completely full. PCSL, we had to close the wait list.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
he is now in the UAE. He got orders, and for a few months he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna stop planning matches after April. Somebody needs to step in and take up the mantle." And I thought about it, and I talked to my wife because you got to run everything, by the spouse. And also, I looked myself in the mirror and I'm like, Frank, you don't have a real job right now, so you could probably do this. So yeah, it was a little. I mean, I promoted a major in April, so I'm getting paid as an
okay.
active duty major to be a student. And I'm friends with a lot of guys on the team. I'm there all the time anyway. I'm an RSO. I love the sport. I want to give back to it. And honestly, Tim made everything super easy and organized. So I just have to not let the ship sink.
How long do you see yourself doing that?
At least another year. It's a question of whether or not I'm going to be able to sustain it when I go to Annapolis. I currently live in Manassas. There's no way that I'm going to live in Manassas while I teach in Annapolis. That commute is just untenable. But as long as I need to, if there's no replacement in sight, what helps is that the guys on the team, they're the ones that do stage design, a bunch of other stuff. They take care of the equipment. So as long as I have some kind of support system, with me being away from Quantico, about 45 minutes away, then I'm good. I will do all the admin stuff. I will do all the boring officer stuff. But Alex Goking is the one who does all the stage design, and that's our agreement. I'm like, dude, I will do all the unsexy, not glorious stuff. I just need you to put down stage designs. We need to meet a couple times a month, and we just need to make sure that we just get the match running. And he put on the PCSL match largely by himself, but we will be doing USPSA this next month.
Okay. Now, Matt, when I'm curious, how much I assume when you got rid of the precision pistol stuff, the colonel, the weapons training battalion colonel, was in full support of what you did.
He was, yes. We basically sat down, brought all the leadership of the team there, and I essentially made my case on the benefits of getting rid of the precision pistol team and bringing on a USPSA team. And I showed everything from monetary benefits to what we could offer the rest of the Marine Corps. And it kind of pivoted from there. After we got the approval from there, about a year later, we started mobile training teams and we went to 2nd Recon Battalion. We went to some of the PMOs and we started teaching them the skills that we have and taught them how to properly train. So yes, he was absolutely in full support of everything we did.
Okay. Now that leads perfectly into the other part of why I was asking that. And that is that, I mean, since I was in and from 85, so from 85 until whenever you were able to stop it, that was also how they competed at the division matches, was basically national match style competition. So by dropping precision pistol, how has that affected division matches?
So that change went into effect even before we dropped precision pistol. So back in 2017 they brought in 2015 they brought the combat matches in, which was just a 3-gun competition, and it wasn't like a formal Marine Corps marksmanship competition or division match. It was just like, hey, we're going to go out here, we're going to host this match, and it was kind of to show the Marines and the Fleet Marine Force a different style of shooting and to educate them and a form of recruitment. In 2017, they brought on the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions, which is what we currently have today, whereas it's predominantly just all action shooting. And that has largely been the same format since 2017. They weren't using any precision rifle or high power. They weren't training any Marines on that. It was just all largely action shooting because that's what the Marine Corps community wanted. The senior leadership was like, "Hey, we're not going to support this if we're going to be doing high power bullseye stuff. We want to see stuff that's going to be relevant to the Marines and the Marine Corps in preparing us for the next fight."
So if I could add on real quick, mostly action shooting, but on the rifle side, you guys also you're mostly doing gas gun stuff like PRS
Yes.
style, and
Yes.
some of that's like some of those ranges go out like Iron Man goes out 1,000 yards. Some of the matches that Matt has put on have really stretched the capabilities of those surface weapons.
So that happened around 2009 timeframe, and one of my very good friends, James Gill, he was the catalyst of that. So just a quick history on Gill. Back in 2006, he was deployed to Iraq. He got blown up. He lost a leg and he lost an eye. He was going through rehabilitation down in Texas. He started picking up shooting then, and he wanted to stay in the Marine Corps. He got approval to stay in the Marine Corps, and so they redesignated him as an armor. And from there, he got onto the Marine Corps shooting team because he was already shooting competition. And so he was on the shooting team roughly from 2009 to 2015 when he was finally medically retired. James Gill is one of the biggest reasons why there is an action shooting team.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I had no idea that they even had one. So I assume then that they're using a version of the M4, whatever shotgun, and the M18. What are they using on a 3 gun?
So, I mean, we're using pure competition guns. So some of the guys are using like P320. Some guys are using, Caspians that have been built, double stack 1911s have been built specifically for 3 gun. The rifle is just a souped up AR platform. And a lot of what they did is they just basically cut down like the barrels on the high power rifles, took a lot of the weight off, modified them, put free floating rails on them and just purpose built them for 3 gun.
Okay. So they just took what they had, modified them, and that
Yep.
was it.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. The quickest thing you could do.
Well,
But
not only that, but it allowed PWS to take on a new skill set of, hey, we're going to develop a muzzle brake. We're going to come up with our own gas blocks, and it really allowed them to use their skills as a gunsmith, as gunsmiths, and kind of continue the path because um, what back in 2018, 2019, we got rid of the sniper program as far as the Marine Corps building the guns for them, and then they basically bought the commercial off the shelf guns. So PWS was kind of out of a job, so the only people they were supporting was teams at the time. So it allowed them to kind of innovate and figure stuff out on their own.
so has PWS drawn down since then, or did
Uh,
they maintain strength?
They maintain strength because they're now starting to do a lot more programs for big Marine Corps now for the Marine Corps Systems Command. They're working on some really cool projects now.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
Dave, if you're interested in some of the we've covered some of these on our podcast episodes. So we did an episode with James Gill and Jared Dalton about the basically the inception of action shooting for the Marine Corps shooting team. Jared Dalton was an OIC back in the day, former chief warrant officer turned commissioned officer, kind of a crazy career path. And then we recently interviewed Colonel Jones, who's currently the commanding officer of Weapons Training Battalion, just about where he sees some of these programs going. So there was recently the creation of the Advanced Marksmanship Training Program. basically a formalization of how Marines are going to learn marksmanship, taking in some of the lessons from competition. Some of the Marines from the shooting team end up becoming part of AMTP. They are looking at just a bunch of other stuff. We talked to them a little bit about we talked to them about the snipers too, didn't we, Matt?
We did.
Yeah, a lot of the topics that you might find interesting were covered in that episode.
Yeah, I disagree with them on the sniper stuff. So
Yeah,
it is
It's
what
hot-
it is.
it's a hot topic.
It is.
It was
It's a hot
it was the
topic.
same way with the takers.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily, and I'm not even sitting here saying, I think it's a dumb idea just for historical reasons. Okay, having known because my dad was also a sniper, but in Vietnam, and knowing, and it was actually. So here's a little bit of history for you guys. Do you guys know who Colonel Willis is?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I know.
All right. So Colonel Willis
He was
took
the
over
CEO of
command
Weapons Training Battalion.
at Weapons Training Battalion when
Yep.
Colonel, I just had his name, Reynolds, died in a plane crash. So Colonel Willis took over as CO. He was already out there. I think he was the XO at the time, took over as CO. And he actually sat my dad down and he sat, why can't I think of his name?
Hathcock.
Hathcock. So they were both on the team. They had both been in Vietnam. They sat down, but Willis was like, Tommy, you're staying as the head coach of the rifle team. And Hathcock, you're going to go over here and start this up. But they sat him down, came up with how they were going to do this whole sniper school thing. But my issue with it is they had nothing going into World War II. They had to put something together. They shut it down after World War II. They go into Korea. They got to ramp it up again. After Korea, they shut it down. They go into Vietnam. They're trying to put it all back together again. So it just seems like we've been through this process before, but it is what it is. You can't change it now.
And I was never a sniper. That wasn't my background. But kind of looking at things as a whole with distributed operations and the way things are going, one of the snipers' main, and I'm not for or against it. I'm kind of indifferent just because I'm on the outside now. Just thinking logically, one of the snipers' main priorities was they were a battalion's first level of intelligence, first line of reconnaissance to see what the enemy's capabilities and limitations were and where they actually are. So with the way technology has gone, you have technology that can go there where other people don't have to. We still can have a long range capability through the designated marksmanship program that the Marine Corps is standing up. So they're just they're taking an asset away, but they're also bringing more assets in to fight without having to put people there on the ground, but still have a long range component. And they're doing it in such a way to where you're going to have more designated marksmen attached to a squad and attached to a platoon if we are going to this EABO distributed operations littoral force. So it is interesting. Like I agree. Like the 0317 battalion sniper. It's an important program and. The Marine Corps isn't necessarily just getting rid of snipers. Yes, at the infantry battalion level, they are, but they're keeping reconnaissance snipers there. They're keeping the Raiders have their sniper program, so there still will be snipers in the Marine Corps.
I know, and I spent time at 3rd and 2nd Recon Battalion, so I get that. But I also, having spent time there, I know how much time they're going to dedicate to that. So my concern is, you're going to lose the knowledge, the actual skill. So there's going to be a delayed response in if we get into something where we need them again, there's going to be a delayed response being able to get everybody ramped up, and that's all. That's my concern. So
Oh no, I totally get it. I also look at it as an opportunity for a contract to be made up to where people can teach them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, Matt, since you've retired, have you done more competition than you did before?
No, I've honestly kind of scaled back, and I've gotten a little bit more stringent on what I do. One of the reasons I did retire, I was going to be one of those guys who went to 30 years in the Marine Corps, um,
Okay.
but kind of seeing how everything was going, kind of looking at myself internally, like, 5 years on the shooting team, a year prior to that being over, basically an independent operator over in Bahrain, doing my own thing, not being in charge of people. One, I knew if I went back to the fleet, I wouldn't have the right mindset. Um, and I think it would have gotten me in some trouble, maybe. I don't know. But also, we were no longer at war, period. And so, what are we gonna do? What kind of deployments are we gonna do? We're gonna do more strategic missions. I don't want to go. I didn't want to leave my family again just to go on a deployment, and do more training in another country. So I've actually taken the time to just spend more time at home and be with family. Um, and I've been more picky with what matches I've gone to. Just quality over quantity.
Okay. And that makes more sense because also it's on your dime now and not the Marine Corps
Yeah.
dime. So
Oh yeah.
there's a lot more cost involved now.
Oh yeah.
And if people, I always say I switched from high power to this in 2018 because it costs a hell of a lot more to go shoot a high power match than it does to go shoot a practical pistol match somewhere.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's crazy the cost difference. Now, I did want to go. The next part is I did listen to that episode with Colonel Jones, and you guys talked about the tactical games, which I don't think I think also doesn't really it has about as much relevancy to me as bullseye shooting. There are things you can get out of it and you can
Mm-hmm.
do. It tests some things, but it's still not quite there. I don't remember the name of the match, but there's one I want to say it's in Georgia where it's a rucking and shooting
Oh,
competition.
you're talking about the Mammoth Sniper competition.
Right. Now something more a lot not the sniper part of it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the tactical games is too heavy on
The
drag this
CrossFit.
weight, put it over this. Yeah, the CrossFit stuff. But the whole, I like the three gun stuff too. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything out there that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what fits the Marine Corps. And is there anybody? So this is for both of you here. Is there anybody that is trying to come up with a match that, or a competition, I should say, shooting that pertains more to what the Marine Corps' mission is than anything out there right now?
So I'll set the stage for you, Matt. The tactical games is incorporating a lot more practical shooting. We did an episode with
Okay.
Nick Thayer, the president, and last year was all about pushing fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And they've pushed fitness to a pretty gnarly level where athletes are carrying like 200-pound sandbags and they're
Yeah.
scaling up like 12-foot walls, just insanity. But this year is about pushing shooting. So
Okay.
I competed in Florence, in Texas, in March, and there were two action stages. There's one complete pistol, drag a sled, shoot some gas gun, and there's one action rifle. They're trying to move more in that direction because they know that people look at the games as basically a CrossFit competition with
Yeah.
minimal shooting involved. But it's actually good that you brought up that topic because Matt is one of the people that's going to be responsible for introducing a lot more practical shooting into the tactical games arena.
Yes.
Oh.
So I've mentioned James Gill. Me and James Gill are designing a curriculum for the tactical games for all in-person training. So we're trying to professionalize everything, and we're creating a program essentially to where if you're going to an affiliate club, you're going to have a curriculum that we design, and it's going to give you everything that you need in order to train your students. And then it's also going to carry over to the Tactical Games University to where if you don't have an affiliate club near you, but there's a university going on somewhere near you, you can go to that, and it's going to give you everything to get you prepared to go shoot at tactical games. And it also pertains to training camp. So once or twice a year, the Tactical Games hosts a training camp um, where it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you are going through essentially a training pipeline of the fundamentals, zeroing your guns to, by the end of it, you are shooting action stages. You are getting more comfortable and confident with your guns that you have. And not only that, but you're also going to be instructed by on the CrossFit or on the athletic side. So you're getting both sides of the spectrum, the marksmanship and the CrossFit side. And they have Jacob Hepner, who was, I want to say, a six times CrossFit Games athlete. He'll be there. So the tactical games is going more in the direction of uh, action shooting. There still be some stage that are like more fundamental shooting under duress, like you have to carry sandbags, you have to carry heavy weights, stuff like that, and then you shoot from a static position at a static target. But then they're also doing the action stages. James Gill, and I want to say in September, he's going to be going out to Nevada, and on Friday, before the actual tactical games pure matches, he's going to have the TAC 2 gun match, which is an action match with some physical challenges, more like you would see in a combat scenario. And then it's going to also be a regular tactical games match.
But to answer your question about what exists out there that's really closer to something that would suit the Marine Corps, I would say the two examples that come to mind are Duskin 3-gun. So Matt's
Yeah.
actually on the board for the Duskin Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of Duskin, but it's basically a 3-gun match that's run down in Fort Bragg. It's in memory of Chief and Officer Mike Duskin, and Mike was huge on getting soldiers into competitive shooting. He was a big 3-gunner himself. So every year on post, they hold a 3-gun match on basically like where the Green Berets train on Bragg. And there's shoot houses. They're making you how much was that bench press, Matt? Those were like dumbbells, were 80-pound dumbbells.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
they were 80-pound dumbbells.
80-pound dumbbells, fast roping, that kind of stuff. So I would say that's more on the shoot. Like it's heavier on the shooting side, but the physical parts of it are still pretty it's still pretty intense. The other match I found that has done a really good job of balancing those two is the Griffin Group Rumble. Griffin Group is just a phenomenal range, but Sherb out there.
Well, let me correct you there. It's no longer at Griffin
Yeah.
Group. It's going to be at TRC, but it's called the Rumble, and
Yeah.
it's physical challenges with technical practical shooting.
So it's like, you're dragging like a 150-pound sled, and then all of a sudden you got to shoot the equivalent of a USPSA stage. So you learn a lot about yourself. Like, it's when you go into a practical shooting stage and your forearms are shot, and you just can't get your grip the same way. It's just making everything that much harder, and also your heart rate's up. It just exposes you in a way that typical USPSA 3-gun doesn't usually. Those are kind of small scale and like one-offs. I think someone has still yet to professionalize and bring that to like a national stage. But I think the tactical games is making an earnest attempt to incorporate practical shooting and make shooting more dynamic.
Okay. Now I do have a couple of questions about that. At the tactical games, what type of rifle shooting are we talking? Are we talking out to 300 yards, out to 200, out to 100? What type of rifle shooting in the tactical games are we talking?
So it's all at the limitations of the range. When I shot my last match, it was a team match down in South Carolina. We shot rifle out to 400 yards, 450,
Okay.
450. So there is a level of technical shooting. There are times where you're shooting static stages, static rifle out to 60, 70, 80 yards and more of a precision. They'll have a target that has like 3 or 4 minutes of angle within that distance, but you're also out of breath, and you may or may not have some type of support, and then you're shooting some targets out at 25 yards, but in more of a practical shooting setting. So
Okay.
it's kind of a different. They have a couple different flavors of marksmanship, so you can't be just good at one. You have to be able to shoot them all.
Now you said you shot a team match. Is there anything in the future for like squad? And I don't mean like a 13-man Marine squad, but say like a fire team squad size squad, maybe a little bit smaller competition where you're all maybe 3 people dragging 150 pound and one does one discipline, one does a shotgun, one does a pistol, one does a rifle, but it's a team type of squad thing.
So the closest thing I could think of that is, and it's not physical at all. It's more stand and deliver match. The Topton 3-man 3 gun. It's a 3-man team match where, like I said, you could be doing just a stand and deliver, and all 3 people are shooting at the same time. They can either be shooting all the same gun, or everybody could be shooting a different gun. Depends on the target array. Or it's also can be. They also have stages that are in a relay format. So that's really the only match out there in a format that has more than 2 people, and it's a 3-man match.
Okay. I've seen I think it was tactical games where they do the relay, where you like one person bashes in a door, the other person ran through the door, and then engaged targets had to run back, then the other person had to go.
Yep, that's a team match.
Okay.
Yep, that's
Is
their
that
team match,
this?
so they host 2 team matches. They're doing 2 team matches this year. Typically, it's an individual. Typically, the majority of their matches are all individual matches. But they are doing some of the team match formats as well. And even at an individual, if you are new to the sport and you want to shoot as a team at an individual competition, you are allowed to register as a team, but you're going to be shooting as a team but on individual stages. They're not making that event specifically for teams.
Okay. Now well, Frank actually mentioned that one of the last competitions you shot, they had 80-pound dumbbells. What do they do if somebody can't? Somebody might be very fit, but not necessarily super strong. So what do they do in those situations?
So,
It's a time added penalty, and I would know
yeah.
that because
Uh,
I did 4. I did like 4, and I couldn't get it up on the fifth press. So I just threw him to the side and I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna shoot the rest of the stage. So
okay.
it's a pretty hefty time penalty. I would want to say like 60 seconds
It
added.
was 60. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
60-second penalty.
Wow.
it was a crusher. It would have been better if I just
Wow.
didn't try it, but yeah.
But I will say the special thing about the Duskin match, it's not just that. One of the biggest things is you shooting a match in honor and in memory of a special forces soldier who gave his life, and who was just a beast of a man. He was like 6'6", you know, 300 pounds, or I don't remember exactly. He weighed a lot, and he was a fit individual. Gave his life for this country, but he had this passion, like Frank said earlier, to get more soldiers involved. And so they only invite 40 to 50 civilians to this match. Everybody else is active duty soldiers in the special forces community in order to introduce them to a different style of shooting. The special forces community realize that there are better ways to train, and there are other events out there to make them more lethal and survivable in combat situations. And so the third special forces group is given full support of continuing the Duskin match and the legacy that Mike Duskin left.
All right. Now, there's something else that you guys, it seemed like all 3 of you, the 2 of you and Colonel Jones agreed on, and that was that you guys felt a better quality match that turned people away was better than the old antiquated matches where you could have more people in. Now, my only dissent to that is again what I did in the Marine Corps. Our trigger time was 1% of my entire time there. So we didn't have really. Here's how bad it was. When we were getting ready to go on a med float, we couldn't even get ammo to zero our M16s.
Whew.
Okay. So what we did was we went out in town to Jayville. We bought ammo. So the lieutenant was the one who got with the platoon sergeant and was like, look, we're okay if we buy the proper ammo and we go out and we can zero our guns and then we can hit the live fire range, shoot up the rest of what we have, and do some maneuvering training with that. That's how we ended up zeroing our guns before we went on a med float.
It sounds like a heartbreak bridge scenario right here.
Yeah. So so when I heard you guys say that, I was like, maybe things have changed.
Yeah.
But I know when I was in, it wasn't that easy to get trigger time. So in my mind, it's like any trigger time is better than no trigger time. And I had almost no trigger time. So have things changed? Is it easier for those guys in the fleet to get trigger time outside of normal training?
So I'll say a lot of it comes down to priorities. I would say it's a lot easier to get ammo. Yes, absolutely. I haven't really encountered a scenario in my career to where it was that hard. But it also comes down to priorities. A battalion only has a certain allotment of ammo, and you can't waste it all. And so you need to use it intelligently during certain exercises, and that's going to be usually your fire and maneuver ranges and your annual quals that you have to accomplish. So to answer the question, yes, it is a lot easier to get ammo compared to back then. It's just used a little bit more intelligently toward the level of tasks that need to get accomplished, but nobody's really getting that type of training in the setting that we offer now.
So I'll add on to that. When I was a company commander, and one of the reasons Matt brought me onto the podcast was to talk about the command sponsored shooting team that I'd started when I was at 8th Com, and it's a priority for me. Right, people like at the bare minimum is that Marines go out and they do their annual qualification, but it's just a qualification and it's not really training. It's a validation, and by virtue of the meaning of the word qualification, it's like the bare minimum of what's required for you to know how to operate your weapon. So it was important to me to get extra trigger time. I planned two ranges, like one pistol specific range. We're out there all day. We had two guys, Josh Cardenas and Sam Nelson, came down to teach my Marines, and we had a good time. We incorporated action style stage. It was a pain in the ass to work with range control, but we made it happen, right? We made that happen on Camp Lejeune. I put together a rifle style course of fire, and we worked on a lot of like close range stuff, manipulations, all transitions. We did an L pres, all that kind of stuff. We had shot timers, and then the next day, I actually had frangible ammunition, so we could shoot on steel targets, and we're able to push steel targets out there. I sourced some locally. I bought some myself, and we were able to shoot. And this was all in preparation for the division match or the Marine Corps marksmanship competition. So, and then after all that, like that was a small group of Marines. Like I wanted it to be a quality event. And from there, I took the most promising Marines and I had them come up with their own curriculum based on what I taught them, what we all taught them. I was like, okay, I want you to teach my company now. We're gonna get this range for an entire week. We're gonna get all the ammo. I'll take care of all the logistics on the O side, but I'm gonna let the NCOs run the show, do the demonstrations, and teach. And the Marines really enjoyed that. And it's not something that I got like extra marks for on my fit rep. It really like it was of negligible I guess benefit to my career, but it's just something I cared about.
One thing I'll say is a lot of the reason why training isn't structured the way we do it in the practical shooting manner is a lot of people don't necessarily know how to train how we train on the team. It comes down to that. When we went down to 2nd Recon Battalion and showed them what they are capable of, they were absolutely amazed, and they brought the team back down 2 3 more occasions. Why? Because they saw the value in it, and a lot of people in the Marine Corps just aren't aware of this style of shooting, and it's no fault to their own. It's just we're nerds. We absolutely love what we do. We're extremely passionate about what it is that we do. Um, so they look at things in terms of mission and capabilities, and nowhere in the TNR manual, the training and readiness manual, does it say you have to engage this target from the holster within 2.5 seconds or 1.5 seconds. A lot of people aren't aware of what their full capabilities are. They're just only aware of what the manual tells them that they have to accomplish, based on whatever mission set that they're going into.
Completely agree. I was at the sniper school from February of '91 to December of '94. I didn't know anything about USPSA, IDPA, none of that. I didn't know anything about practical shooting.
And what
I didn't.
USPSA started in what 1977 or something like that with
Yeah,
Colonel Cooper. I mean, it's been around for so long, yet it's starting to now just gain traction in the Marine Corps.
yeah. Ernest Langdon was at HRP at Quantico, who ended up being a national champion in 2000 in USPSA. So, I mean, I had no idea. So crazy. But going back real quick, hopefully things have changed at the reconnaissance battalion too, because we had one guy in our platoon who was school trained as a sniper. At the time, we went on deployment, and he had never seen that rifle that he took on deployment until we went on deployment. And then it went back in the armory when we got back, and he never saw it again. So hopefully things change with the dissolution of the division schools and the instructor school. Hopefully things change within those battalions and they get out there and do more training with that stuff.
Oh, they absolutely do. I mean, I think one thing we learned through the years we were in Iraq and Afghanistan was the value of training, and especially in terms of snipers, getting them out there and learning and understanding their guns and getting the dope for their rifles and just knowing what its capabilities and limitations are.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, the one last question I have for you guys before we close this thing out is, it's a two-parter. How did you guys start the podcast? And two, did you have to go through PAO to do the podcast?
So I'll take this. So we started the podcast, or I'll start it with, I started the podcast in August or September of 2021. And I did not have to go through PAO. I started the podcast because I remember what it was like. And, one of my very good friends, Chris Scott, who is one of the OICs on the team, both of us kind of talked and we were like, there is no information about the Marine Corps shooting team anywhere. Yes, we have the Facebook page, which we try and keep updated, but there's really no information about what it is that the team does, how to get on the team. We were like, when we were trying to get to the team, and in that period of waiting, we just wanted to see what they were doing and get as much information as we could. So it kind of started as a catalyst to, get more information out to the rest of the Marine Corps and the Fleet Marine Force. And it was, when I started, it was kind of spotty. It was like, I'll put an episode out here, put an episode out there, and I really didn't professionalize it. And so then I had Frank on after an episode, after we met at a tactical games team match, and talked to him, and then I brought him on again, and I was like, I asked Frank, do you want to be a host on this podcast? And ever since Frank's on, it's been nothing but getting more and more professionalized.
Well, I mean, he is in a master's program.
Yes. Frank,
he is going to go teach at the Naval Academy.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't know that when he pulled me, but
yeah,
it did end up working out.
Well,
But,
you were
part
probably
of-
a captain at the time.
I was. Yeah, I met Matt during one of the MIC, the division matches. I went to championships while he was still a staff in COIC. They were looking at me to possibly take the OIC position, but obviously other things happened. But I'm really grateful for him bringing me along. It's he he knows so many people within the shooting community and the Marine Corps community. So I get to have conversations with people I wouldn't have met otherwise. But it's also, I mean, it's fun. It's the reason you do it, Dave. I mean, you get to talk to people about shooting. You get to talk to people about one of your main passions.
Amazing.
Yeah, you get to have conversations like this. So yeah, no, it's really been quite rewarding. Another thing I'll mention real quick is when Matt started the podcast, it was 3G IQ, like 3-gun IQ, and we recently rebranded because it's not really about just 3-gun anymore. We didn't really want to, pigeonhole ourselves.
Right.
We have started covering the tactical games. I shoot mostly USPSA, and now I'm a match director. So we wanted to. It's the emphasis has always been on the military, and our purpose has always been to get information out there, but to encourage Marines, military, whatever, to get into competition shooting, right? To just experience it, like just try it, and see what else is out there, because it brings us a level of confidence and a level of understanding your weapon systems and ballistics and all these other things that are only going to make you more lethal and only going to make you more survivable. Something that both of us are really, passionate about. So our episodes are a mishmash of, we'll interview guys on the shooting team. We'll interview, Colonel Jones. We'll interview civilian shooters, but it has to be shooting related or military related. We're nearing 100 episodes. I wasn't around for all of those, but it's been really rewarding along the way. Like Matt and I talk like most days during the week, just brainstorming ideas and bouncing ideas off of each other.
I like that you guys are doing it and it's focusing. I mean, I hope that more and more Marines find it and listen to it and get involved. But let me ask you this. Quantico is unique in that they have the Quantico Shooting Club. Mm-hmm. Most bases don't have that. But is there any, and maybe you guys can shed some light on this, but is there any drive to have practical shooting matches on other Marine bases?
So I can take the lead on this one, Matt, if you're cool with that. So I mentioned I started that shooting team, right? So I've sent my order and all my documents, the planning, the LOI, I've sent that to maybe 5 different people. So off the top of my head, we know the operations officer down in Stone Bay. His name's Parker Tomasi. He's a major. He hosted his own intramural, which was all action shooting. And when I was in that office, him and his boss were talking, and his boss was like, "That was really cool. I enjoyed shooting that match. Maybe we should do this on the weekends." So that conversation is happening.
Awesome.
My friend over in Okinawa, the last place you would expect this to happen, Jared Homeyer. After he hosted an intramural, same thing, action shooting, and they're looking at making it a more regular thing. Because honestly, for guys stationed out there, that's the only way they're going to get trigger time is if the base hosts a match and use government ammo weapons. Haven't really heard anything on the Hawaii front, but we did just have another Marine go out. Staff Sergeant Robert Germanello went out to California. He also hit me up for my order, so he's going to try to get something started over at the 3rd Marine Air Wing. So that's really all it is. Like I kind of ran through a lot of walls and I messed some things up, and I made myself look foolish in some ways doing all this and putting together on Lejeune. But I think the ripple effect is that people have realized that what's possible, and they realize that it's going to be difficult working with range control, and working with logistics and all the staff sections is always going to be a hassle. But as long as you're on top of it, there's really no limit to what you can accomplish on the Marine Corps base. And the end product is that you get to bring practical shooting to your Marines, and they get to see a side of shooting that's actually fun and not just, pulling pits or like waiting in line to do their qualification.
Yeah, well, it expands their range of marksmanship ability.
Absolutely.
And it gives them that trigger time. Like I was saying, that we never got. Had they had matches at Lejeune, Stone Bay, that I could go to, I'm sure that, there would have been between the entire battalion out on Onslow Beach. We weren't that far from Stone Bay. So that would have been, and we would all go out at times on a weekend on just somebody's property, stand online and just shoot at trees. You know what I mean? So it would have given us something a little bit better to do. But my question is, on Okinawa, was that Hansen or Schwab that he did that?
Matt, do you remember where do you guys usually do the mic on?
We typically do the mix on Camp Hansen. They have the ranges for it there. I mean, they do have the ranges at Schwab too, but
They do.
it's a lot easier to get them done over at Hansen.
Well, and the only reason I asked was I wanted to make sure it wasn't somewhere further south because, most of your infantry guys are either at Schwab or Hansen. So if it's at Hansen, that's it's only 12 miles. It's like a half hour, but it's only like 12 miles. So, or might even be less. I don't remember. But anyway, it's an easier move to go down there to be able to shoot and then go back to the base. So,
Yep,
all right. Well, that's cool. And it is bullets and bourbon.
it is.
Yep.
All right.
Correct.
I like it.
Yeah, we come out with episodes every Friday. Yeah, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, even though the Facebook's pretty dead. But yeah, hit us up and give us a listen.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go back now and listen to the James Gill and Dalton episodes. Well, gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Was there anything that we covered that we needed to touch on that you felt we didn't cover properly?
No, I think we covered everything. We just appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man,
Thanks,
that's
Dave.
my pleasure. Thank you. Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.